Back in 2016, satellites hovering above the Antarctic region found something rather strange. A weird formation that appeared to be peering out from the ice. It appeared that the ice had melted away, and this formation was pretty much peeking its little nose out on the region. It was difficult to reach. Scientists believe that this was the top of a man-made pyramid that was erected hundreds of thousands of years ago. At the very least, the fact that there are man-made pyramids in Antarctica tends to lend some credence to the belief that humans actually settled in this area before we knew anything. Some scientists even believe that these pyramids show that there was an entire civilization of humans that lived in this region. However, for now, it is impossible to gather much evidence, since that area is pretty much inaccessible. Still though, what are the possibilities that a place so cold and uninhabitable as Antarctica could actually have held a civilization of people? Artifacts dating back thousands of years have been found, leading some to theorize that an ancient culture existed on Earth before modern humans. In 2017, a team of geologists from the Alfred Wegener Institute for Polar Marine Research in Germany went to Antarctica and collected core samples from deep within its frozen seafloor. Their objective was to analyze what the continent's climate might have been like in earlier times, and what they found was quite interesting. Essentially, the geological team is hypothesizing that while Antarctica's climate today might not support much life, it wasn't necessarily always like that. Antarctica has survived a meteorite hit. Meteorites are among the biggest harbingers of extinction in the known universe. Whenever a meteorite hits a planet or a surface, it is pretty much a recipe for catastrophe. Just think back to the dinosaurs. Those animals were probably living on their own in their own prehistoric utopia, and boom, a meteorite hit, and the planet quite literally had to start again. Interestingly, however, it appears that there was an even bigger meteorite hit that took place in Antarctica. One which could predate the dinosaurs and which, according to sources including Joe Rogan himself, could have been much worse. Recently, Joe had YouTube-earned independent researcher Jimmy Corsetti, as well as content creator and author Ben Van Kerwick on his podcast. In it, the three men spoke extensively on ancient humans as well as their ability to survive extinction-level events. As part of this monologue, Joe pulled up an interesting report. According to reports, this meteorite crater was discovered back in 2006 in a joint mission organized by NASA and the German Aerospace Center. The objective of this mission had been to try and measure regularities in the Earth's gravitational field, which would then show the distribution of mass across the planet, as well as changes in the metric. Over time, scientists have come to believe that the meteorite responsible for creating a massive crater in Antarctica could have triggered a global extinction-level event. This belief stems from the idea that the collision caused an enormous amount of dust to rise into the atmosphere, rendering the entire planet hostile towards all forms of life. In this scenario, months of darkness and caustic acid rain would have rendered the planet uninhabitable. Yet a few primordial shellfish managed to survive this fallout. These resilient shellfish would have evolved to become the ancestors of the dinosaurs, which ended up becoming the dominant species on the planet for the next 200 million years before another meteorite came and wiped them out. Antarctica, as we mentioned earlier, is a highly secluded place. Gaining access to the continent can be tricky unless you have a clearly defined objective. Even if you manage to gain access to Antarctica, you wouldn't be able to explore it in its entirety. Tourists, hikers, and others are only granted access to a small portion of the landmass, where they can engage in activities and enjoy the sights. Several sectors of the continent are closed off, accessible only to researchers and military personnel. Think of these regions as the Area 51 of Antarctica. No one really knows what is going on there, and many suspect that it could be a secretive spot where experiments or other operations are carried out. According to some sources, people who have attempted to sneak into these restricted areas have been seized and immediately taken inside by guards. No one has been able to report what happens after that, and it's widely believed that these individuals were never seen or heard from again. The official explanation is that these areas are off limits because governments are trying to protect biodiversity and potentially endangered species residing there. However, wouldn't be surprising if there's something else, something a bit fishy, happening in this region. It all just seems a little too strange, doesn't it? One other weird phenomenon is called the third man factor. If you're not an explorer or a daredevil, there's a chance you might never have encountered this phenomenon. However, for many who have ventured into remote places like Antarctica, this phenomenon seems as real as daylight. The third man factor is a term used to describe the overwhelming sense of another presence, especially when insignificant distress or facing great danger. People often describe it as a feeling like there's someone walking with them or guiding them, even though they're alone. Due to Antarctica's unusual periods of light and darkness, many visitors to the continent have reported feeling this sensation. Some have even claimed to have experienced hallucinations and seen shadows cast by nothing while traversing the region's seemingly infinite plain. One notable encounter occurred in the early 1900s when Sir Ernest Shackleton, a famous British explorer, led an expedition to Antarctica. His expedition, which ran from August 1914 to January 1917, sought to be the first to traverse the Antarctic continent by land. According to Shackleton's accounts, he and his two companions were trying to travel by boat to South Georgia Island. They decided to stop and search for food and shelter. During their trek, the companions suddenly felt the presence of a fourth person walking with them. They walked for 36 hours over mountains and glaciers, all the while feeling as if there were 4 people in their group. Since then, many others who have felt lost or stranded while exploring Antarctica have reported experiencing the same phenomenon. It could be related to the desperation of the situation, or perhaps it's something unique to the environment of Antarctica itself. Finally, let's talk about the blood falls, one of the most eerie discoveries in Antarctica over the past few years. Located in the continent's McMurdo Dry Valleys, the Blood Falls is a 5-story high waterfall that pours out from a glacier into a lake. Its unique color is so striking against the backdrop of white snow and glaciers that it's been named for its resemblance to flowing blood. The Blood Falls were first discovered in 1911 by Thomas Griffith Taylor, a geologist who had led several expeditions to Antarctica. The glacier from which the waterfall emerges was eventually named after Taylor in his honor. For a long time, scientists were unsure as to why the waterfall exhibited its unique color. When Taylor initially discovered it, he believed that algae had discolored the water. However, scientists later discovered that the Blood Falls was once a very salty lake that had been sealed off from the atmosphere due to the formation of ice. This isolation caused an increase in the water's salt content, which prevents it from freezing even in the harshest weather conditions. Moreover, the water contains a high concentration of iron, which lends it its blood-red color. Additionally, the water does not have any access to oxygen or sunlight, which gives it an even darker hue. And now, what if we tell you that a lot of people have actually made UFO sightings in Antarctica? Back in October 2020, someone was scanning satellite imagery of Antarctica when they came across an interesting discovery. They immediately shared it with author Brad Olson, and he was quite shocked to come upon the same thing. A metallic-looking object, half covered in ice, appeared to have been peeking out of the land surface, and it looked suspiciously like an alien spacecraft. Olson believes that an alien spacecraft must have been left there thousands of years ago, only to be covered up by the immense layers of ice in the region. However, why would it be that an alien civilization visiting Earth would choose Antarctica of all places to settle? Well, according to experts, the fact that Antarctica has grown to be such a cold, uninhabitable place for humans doesn't necessarily mean that other life forms won't be able to thrive there. It is possible that an alien race looking to visit our planet would feel more comfortable in a place like Antarctica than they would feel elsewhere. Telling you that there's ice in Antarctica is a bit like telling you that the sun is hot. It's pretty obvious. But there's something quite interesting about the ice in this region. Some of it actually gives off sound. When some researchers set out to explore the ice shelves in Antarctica, they were pleasantly surprised to come across a glacier that gives off melodic sound. The Ross Ice Shelf, as it was named, appears to have a thing for giving off sound and making music, like a singing ice. The Ross Ice Shelf is the largest of its kind in Antarctica, with a size that rivals all of France. When winds blow across its dunes and crash against its surface, the collision creates vibrations that produce continuous seismic tones. This means that the shelf pretty much sings at all times. However, the sounds aren't audible to human ears. Scientists had to use seismic sensors to listen to them. Another interesting fact is that the sound appears to change as the weather changes too. So, scientists now use the sounds, as well as changes in the sounds, to measure the ice shelf stability and vulnerability to climatic conditions. Antarctica, the land of mysteries and secrets, presents some of the harshest conditions and the most beautiful scenery in the world. It's pretty fascinating to think that there's an expanse of land on our planet that hasn't yet been fully explored. Antarctica is the coldest region on Earth, with an estimated 90% of the world's ice. Being the most isolated place on Earth, it remains largely unexplored, promising many more exciting discoveries in the future.